Robin, great to see you. Thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat with me. I want to start off the interview by reflecting back to you something that you said to me when we last spoke. You said, in future, your doctor is going to be AI. Now, a lot of people will be horrified by that, I suspect. Why do you say that, and why is that important?
So the reason that I believe that is that healthcare has really changed. The things that we need to know about ourselves in a decision-making process about health are complex. We can put in all the things that really matter: structure, where we live, how we work, what our families are like. All those cultural elements actually have a huge amount of impact on our decision making and our culture of health. And so that's a huge amount of detail.
Mhm.
Physicians have had an increase in the papers, in the data, in any specific little thing. They've had this massive increase in information. Some of it's great information, some of it's not great information, but not having the time or the training to really get into the details means they've got this avalanche of data that they're trying to apply to an avalanche of data about you as an individual. So in the past, we made decisions based on large groups of people. In the future, we have the opportunity to make a decision about one person, what's best for one person. And that environment requires a layer of intelligence in the system that can sort that for us, not to make decisions for you, but it actually furthers your autonomy in health to be able to provide that picture, both to the physician who's treating you and to the person who's being treated.
Yeah. Now, I want to come back to the autonomy bit in a moment, but let's just, I mean, you've just written a book, and what sits behind the book, if you like, is that you want to rethink healthcare both in the US and in the UK and globally. Just tell us about the book, and then tell us about the rethinking healthcare bit. So there's sort of two there. Tell us first of all about the book. Why did you write the book, and what were you trying to achieve with it?
So, I finished this long career of treating patients, of working in a large healthcare system, Banner Health, of working with Johnson and Johnson as their global medical affairs for Ethicon. And when I came out of all that, I was sitting with my best friend at a diner. And she said, "What are you going to do next?" And I said, "I'm going to fix this healthcare system. It's so broken." And I actually turned over a paper placemat. I started drawing what I knew we needed. And the central problem with it was that the system was about everybody else, but the person who's being cared for and who's caring for themselves mostly. And so I realized that we needed to reorient the system, and that one of the reasons we've been so unsuccessful in making progress with making the system better is that it's so complicated and it's so broken that adding one more layer of trying to fix it isn't going to get the job done. So I set out to really study it and figure out exactly what we could do. And so Dr. AI reimagines health in a very different way. And it reimagines it as a state of well being, not as a state of illness. So, right now, our whole medical establishment is about caring for you once you get sick.
Mm.
This process is about providing an environment where you can have health. It is, healthcare is probably the largest unmanaged risk for business.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a massive unmanaged risk, and it's getting much more expensive.
Okay. Let me just
So,
let me just clarify something. So when you talk about rethinking. I mean, what was going through my mind as you were speaking was about making healthcare more patient centric and shifting away from, if you like, uh, treating people to preventing people getting put. I mean, is that a fair summary of what you're?
Super fair because, it turns out that health is a lot less expensive. And when you think about it, for an institution, they're accounting that cost in dollars.
Mhm.
But for an individual, you're accounting that cost in decrease in value of your life. If you're sick and you can't participate with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, then everything about your life suffers. You're less productive. You don't reach your potential, which could be amazing to humanity. You don't you can't love your children as long. You don't get to participate in their lives as much. There's a whole set of things that are very personal to you and that this matters about. So what I tried to do was find a construct that would allow us to be both very precise and specific, but offer people the kind of ongoing advice and support they need to choose health
Yeah.
rather than to wait until they get too sick to choose anything.
Okay. So let's just go back to the problem for a second. So, I mean, you want to reimagine healthcare. What would you say? And I know we can't do all the detail here, but what would you say are the big things, the big problems that need to be resolved in healthcare? I mean, just give us a summary of the big ones,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about
Probably,
the solution in a second.
okay, probably the biggest problem in healthcare is the fact that you don't know what you need to have to be healthy.
Right.
You don't have any idea about what that looks like. And it turns out that prevention of getting sick is a lot about you understanding what you have to do in your environment with your life to
Right.
be well, right? So that's a huge thing. Second thing is, we grew up in an era where daddy knows best, doctor knows best, right?
Yeah.
And so it turns out that health is actually more about your decision making and your autonomy. And if you have the information that you need to make good decisions, then you may not have to reach sick. But the whole system we have is set up to pay for sick care.
Yeah.
That's all it does. So everything that that comes out, even like right now, the use of chatbots and all that, it's designed around that endpoint.
Yes.
So, that's a big shift for the world to realize that, let's not let it get to that. Now, the problem is a lot of the financial infrastructure of health is set up
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah. So
So
you've
that's a
got
challenge.
what you're saying is you've got to focus on sickness rather than on prevention, and you've got financial systems that are structured that way. I mean, is it those two things that you're seeking to change, or are
And
there other things as well?
yeah, and government, I mean, all of that lines up in the same way, right? But the thing that I'm really trying to do is to empower people to make different kinds of decisions for themselves and to use the ability they have now to access an intelligence that can help them do that. A
Yeah.
lot of people will do it. The proof is in the pudding. And right now, I think in the United States, almost half of Americans or more are turning to intelligence engines to help them, not chatbots, but somewhere you can have a conversation, if you will.
Yeah.
And physicians are also, like right now in the United States, I think 66% of physicians are using ChatGPT before they finish their final note of a patient visit to make sure that they didn't miss anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, people are starting to adopt, but the infrastructure is still set up for the old thinking.
Okay. Let me ask you about that decision-making process, and we'll come back to autonomy in a second. But one of the things that interests me, I mean, when I look at my own history, I've done lots of daft things, and that hasn't necessarily been because I don't have information? I mean, I might have misinterpreted that. I might have ignored it. I might have just been motivated by something else. I mean, are you saying that poor decision making around health and well-being is the problem, or is it something more than just access to information?
Mm. It's, at the end of the day, it's acting on information, right? That's going to be the differentiator.
Mm.
Um, the thing is that most of us don't really have a very good idea. I mean, if you're going to the pub and you're drinking until you can't walk every single day, we have a pretty good idea that's probably not good for us, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're smoking, you probably have a really good idea that that's not good for us. But instead of couching that in a context of a general population, we all know that there's people who have smoked all their lives and they live to be 110, right? So the question is, what is the difference? And the difference is personal. It's about you as an individual. And so if you can factor that in to your decision making, it may help you. Now, it may not, and you might decide, I'm just going to do it anyway. Like I like to ski up above the mountain line where there's no, I could get in an avalanche, I could run over a boulder, but I still love to ski. And I realized that I could break my leg or I could die. Those are human decisions that we make.
Mm.
And they're fair. I mean, I think that's really, really important that we be able to make them. The difference is it gives you more data. And it may be that you would act on that differently. It may not. We'll have to see.
Yeah. And tell me about the role that autonomy, how do you see autonomy playing into this? Because we've talked about that quite a lot, about the importance of individuals being autonomous in their decision making and
Mm.
the impact, both positive and negative, that that can have. I mean, just talk us through that idea and why is it so central to what you're suggesting that we need to do?
Yeah. Having been a physician for so long, I can tell you that providing a balanced advice is is not that common. Most of the time, let's just say, just to give an example, that you have something that you really need done. And if you go to somebody who does it in a certain way, that's what you have.
Mm.
But the truth is that in 2025, any individual thing that you might choose could have five solutions.
Okay.
You could have traditional surgery. You could have antibiotics. You could have an intervention that's done with, a small catheter, like with the heart. And heart disease is probably a great example. It used to be that everybody got a big cut right here, cranked them open, fixed their heart. Tremendous, amazing, heroic science and art went into that. And nowadays, you have a radiologist or a cardiologist put a small incision either in your wrist or your groin. They put a wire up. They can change a valve. They can put in a new valve.
Yeah.
They can open up your arteries. I mean, so your choices have really expanded. But if you go to somebody who only knows how to split your chest open to fix it, you're going to get your chest opened to fix it.
Yeah. So,
On the other hand, if you had diabetes, for instance, or obesity, sorry, Paul, you could intervene. Like right now, you can intervene with a GLP-1. You can lose the weight. You cannot get diabetes. You cannot get heart disease. You don't have to have all that. So things are really changing, and those choices are a lot different. And you should be able to make them because there's enough information now for you to be offered the choices in a way that you understand your own language, your own level of sophistication. It's all there in your Dr. AI.
yeah. So what you're saying is that if you give people choices, to do that, you need to provide them with better, more personalized information about the options available to them. So I get that, and I can definitely see the logic to that. What about though things like, some of the misinformation, the kind of
Mm.
conspiracy theory stuff that you read online? I mean, I don't read a lot of it, but I've come across it occasionally. I mean,
Right.
and I find it amazing that some people are completely taken in by that.
Mm.
I mean, how do you counter those problems? Because giving better information to help people make choices, there's definitely a logic for that. But if their ability to interpret that is if you like skewed by some of this other stuff, I mean, what's your thoughts on dealing with that problem?
So, I've spent a lot of time thinking about bias
Hmm.
because essentially what you're talking about is people who adopt a certain life view or
Yeah.
bias, and then they almost can't escape it. Like everywhere they go, that's what's driving their decision making. And it's a tough problem. It's always been a tough problem throughout history, right? You can cite stuff going back way back that demonstrates that. The opportunity, though, it's strange because people are really beginning to understand the nuances of AI.
Hmm.
For instance, they understand that AI has taken in the world's data, and in the world's, writings and manuscripts and information and statistics, there's bias. And so training the intelligence to look at that bias critically and
Yeah.
expose it to you as part of its disclosure, if you will,
Hmm.
of the information it's delivering, at least you have a chance to see what that is
Hmm.
and to say, I'm not going to choose that. I'm not going to choose that worldview. It's too narrow. It's too confining. It actually doesn't fit with my life at all. And I think here, because, the group of people that have access to information, Gen Z, for instance, they're able to look at this a little bit differently. And my goal is to provide this intelligence layer that would allow them to look at healthcare decisions much more objectively and differently
Hmm.
from all sides, if you will, instead of from a bias that you might
But
be swayed by.
I mean, I'm an economist by training, and one of the things that I mean, I can't remember the guy who wrote it now, but there's a very famous book in our world which is called "Fooled by Randomness," and the author of the book makes the point that people are constantly fooled by stuff that is not correlated. So, and just to give you an example, I was talking to somebody not long after COVID had kicked in,
Mm,
and she'd had a heart problem, and what she was saying was that she thought COVID, the vaccine, had caused it. Now,
mm,
it might have done, or it might not have done, but the fact that the two events had happened at roughly the same time, she was taking that as a correlation
right,
and a causation there. There was some kind of
right.
causation that the vaccine had caused there. Now, that's not just about the information being available, it's about how people are misinterpret some of
Mm,
the things that are going on.
hmm.
You know,
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I will say that one of the opportunities that we have though is, let's just say that you encountered that Dr. AI is talking with your friend,
Hmm.
and she says this to Dr. AI in her chat.
Yeah, yeah.
And Dr. AI would say, here's here's what we know about this. We know that there's a certain number of people who have a vaccine that subsequently develop a health problem. What we know is that of the people that develop heart disease, the number that develop it because of the vaccine is the probability is X
Hmm.
versus, the probability is Y, that's not related. All of a sudden, people start to realize that the answer is that nobody did, which no one can believe, or that everybody did. The answer is, did I? Right? Like, what is the chance that I developed it? And so it helps frame the conversation in reality of what's known rather than in the, fog of belief that's not known, that's not based on data. So it starts to reframe data for people in the context of their decision making, and that may help us in terms of bias. I hope it will.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hope it will too. I mean, it's going to be be interesting to see how that plays out. Let me move from the two problems that you've articulated. One is about individualization, about personalized healthcare, and the other thing is about this shift away from ill health to well-being, to being well. The preventative move. How do you suggest? I mean, I totally get those two problems. I mean, there's a whole debate going on here in the UK about a shift towards preventative healthcare. It's very easy to say. It's much, much more difficult to do given the incentives that drive the industry. And the incentives are slightly different here in the UK, but they're still just as powerful, would be my view. How do you tackle that problem? And how do you rethink the health system as a personalized system and as one that is focused on prevention rather than people that are ill? I mean, how do you do? I mean, what's your thinking about how you do that? That's a tough problem.
It is. It's going to be the problem, actually, because every single part of the system, it's all oriented to wait until you get really sick before, and then they make a lot of money. And if you look at the way the incentive structures are positioned, they're all positioned to increase billing. That's their whole job, right? Increase the number of bills. And in the United States, we're seeing a huge jump in cost this year. We've got millions of more people that are not going to be covered this year in 26. And we're going to be at kind of a breaking point, I think, in regards to our healthcare system. And, all healthcare systems are coming under pressure for different reasons. But even though we don't have universal healthcare like you do, what you find out is that employers are still paying for healthcare in both systems, right? In the United States, the cost for a family for healthcare is it's just gone so high. And most middle income families are going to struggle to pay those bills, even if they're covered by their employer. So, we have to get to a different answer. And what's going to happen is people are going to come with, yet another expensive fix. And in the book, I really detail this, like what the choices were and what happened. And I think that hopefully if people look at that and they say, okay, we've got to start over. Like, it's a different era now than it was in the 1920s. So we have to start over. And I think that nothing short, actually, of comprehensive health, which includes dental and vision and hearing, because those things have a huge impact on your quality of life and productivity. If you know anybody who's having trouble with their hearing and they're 50, like they're almost not social anymore because they can't even get in a conversation. So imagine that impact at work. But the other thing is, the Gen Zers, I was sitting down talking to a family the other day, and the young girl who was there didn't order a cocktail. She ordered water. And I said, "Oh, how long have you been pregnant?" Right? And she goes, "Oh, I'm 7 months pregnant." She was so excited. And I said, "Well, tell me about your healthcare and pregnancy." I didn't have to say another word. For half an hour, she told me about how really difficult that's been. She's the producer of one of the most famous television programs in the world, and she can't get good healthcare. So, this is erupting, if you will, And I think it's going to cause, it's a moment where we could make some really good choices. We could get everybody engaged. We could redesign the system. And Paula, it needs to be redesigned. Even the educational process is so antiquated.
Mm.
People aren't even learning about the things that they need to know to treat people well.
Mm.
So I'm really hopeful that it will be the very institutions, that are being affected that go, okay, this is a time for a sea change. This
Yeah.
is electricity. This is steam. This is the Gutenberg press. This is that moment.
Yeah.
And we can fix it.
Well, I mean, I like your optimism, and I like your, I like a bit of ambition. I mean, I really do.
A
But
bit.
let's just look at a practical example. So, if you take the UK, now I know you're in the US, but in the UK,
Yep.
we've got a rapidly aging population.
Mm.
We've got a lot less younger people coming into the labour market. We've got lots and lots of short, fat, grey-haired old blokes like me that are getting to the end of their careers and what have you. Now, okay, I'm in reasonably good nick, but you think over the next few years, there's a good chance I'll get ill with something. How do you, if you like, and I don't want to be abandoned by saying, well, we don't deal with people that are ill now. We only prevent health. How do you, if you like,
Right.
change the wheel while the car's still moving?
Mm,
Because
mm,
that's really the challenge. We
mm.
have to rethink the system without abandoning what the system is already doing for the people that need it,
Right.
whilst
Right.
you shift resources and you develop the thinking that's necessary to prevent some of those things happening, or at least happening, or at least enabling them to happen, so that you live longer, healthier. Like, I mean, you'll get ill eventually.
Right.
But
Right.
so, how
Right.
do you change the wheel with the car still moving?
Yeah.
That's the thing that interests me.
It's so interesting. And it's such an important question because we're good at rescuing. I mean, honestly,
Yeah, yeah,
we've gotten better and better at rescuing people. So when the moment comes and your heart blockage happens, people can fix that and they can rescue you from that. The question is then, what do we do with that middle group, right? The young people, I think, are going to figure this out on their own because they've got access to data and they'll pick up Doctor AI quicker than anything.
yeah,
We've got to adopt a new operating system for health. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember when Apple became a thing or Microsoft became a thing. All of a sudden, there was this new way to do things,
yeah,
and that's kind of where healthcare is right now. We're going to have to adopt a new operating system. I call it Health 4.0, which is kind of digitally enabled health, but it's not abandoning where we have, but it's a very big sea change. Like, let me give you this example. A lot of people right now in the United States are struggling to just even get any kind of health care, like to get in to see a
yeah.
physician. But going in to see a physician is like thinking from the 1950s. We found that out during COVID.
Mm.
It's so much better to tap your phone and get an answer right now and put in, and especially if that knows you really, really well. So I actually think that front end part is a lot less expensive. And then eventually we'll catch up to people being healthier longer. Wouldn't it be cool if after all that you know and all you've done, that you could look forward to being healthy
Mm.
until the very last moment? Because that would be your best life, probably.
Yeah. But that suggests that you can predict everything.
Mm.
I mean, so I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I'd love to be sat here thinking when I'm 80 years old, I'm still going to be, trotting
Yeah,
around having a great time. I mean,
right.
I can't,
Skiing.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, whether that's true or not, I don't know. And partly it's because I don't know what I don't know. So
Right.
how do you overcome that bit of the challenge? And I know there are some diagnostic things that you can do that
Mm,
give you an
mm.
indication of whether you're likely to get, whether you're more or less at risk of picking up certain types of illness or having or whatever. How do you address that problem though? Because it's very easy to say we want people to live a long, healthy life. It's much more difficult to predict
Right.
those things.
So, part of that is we're not using modern tools to predict it.
Right.
So very few people get the things that I've gotten, that I've paid for myself, my genomics. Like I can tell you right now, if I need any kind of medication, I know what medication out of a group will work best for me in my
Yeah.
biology, and and I can tell you what dose would even work best so that I don't have side effects. That's a huge jump. Think about it. Let's say you get hypertension and I've got to put you on a hypertension medication. Well, let's not fool around for 6 months or a year getting you on the right one. Let's just choose it right off the bat. So that technology exists, but not very many people get to take advantage of it. Um, you can find out if you're susceptible to cancer. It's going to, driving a lot of healthcare dollar spend right now. Um, and if you are, then the system, the intelligence can look at your life and say, okay, combined with this risk of cancer of X, of the liver or whatever, of the lung is a good example in the UK, right? So combined with that, if you choose to smoke, which is up to you, you can accelerate your risk for cancer by about 30 years. What that means is if you're going to choose that, we need to be testing you in this way
Yeah.
every year or 18 months. That's the difference, is that it gives you that platform of who you are, where you live, has probably the biggest impact on how long you live and whether you get chronic illness. It's a huge impact.
Yeah.
So these kinds of knowledge will then be able to transform in your phone to knowledge about you that you can use to make decisions. And the healthcare system can help augment that. We don't have to abandon anybody to
Yeah.
get to health upstream. We
I
really
mean,
don't.
I was talking to somebody the other day who was saying that one of the issues that doctors have and individuals have is that they don't necessarily understand the results of
Mm,
those tests. So if you,
mm,
up until a while ago, I didn't know what hypertension was. I mean, you mentioned it. I didn't know what it was. So, if you don't know what it is, how do you, now you're a surgeon, so you understand
sure.
what those things are. But the
Yep.
vast majority of the population are only, my guess would be they're only going to be interested in that when it's a problem. So if you said to me, you've got hypertension, you need to do something about it, well, okay, now I get that. If I don't know, if I was me when I was 18 and somebody was saying, well, you shouldn't do those things because they might give you hypertension. There's a good
Right.
chance I would have ignored them anyway. But there's also a massive chance that I may have ignored it, but also I definitely wouldn't have understood it when I was 18. I wouldn't have known
Mm,
what people meant. So I think there's a couple of issues about
mm,
people's interpretation of that shift to prevention.
right.
You know,
And it actually is a perfect time to talk about what the capabilities of Dr. AI are. Because, Dr. AI can communicate to you as an 18-year-old.
yeah,
It can communicate, it can ask you questions like, do you wake up with headaches in the morning? Are you having X, Y, or Z? If you are, and you answer yes, then it is able to explain to you why that's important
yeah,
and what it may mean. And and it can say, listen, I'm as part of your health system, I'm sending you this thing. You put it on your arm, and you use it 3 times a day, and you just the results will go right into me, and then I'll know if you have high blood pressure. And if you don't have it, then maybe you are drinking too much every night, too
yeah,
many beers every night, right? Like, that's why you have a headache, right?
yeah,
But the thing about the capability of intelligence is it can communicate at your understanding level.
mm,
It can ask you the right questions because questions, Paul, as you are demonstrating here, are the key,
yeah,
because each of us has individual answers. And as we answer, the intelligence will learn how to communicate with us. Like, when you start using, like I use Chat GPT, a lot of people use Gemini. When you start using these large language models that are learning at such speed, it starts to understand you. When you ask a question, it knows kind of where you're going with it. And I like that because then I don't have to be so, I can be implicit, but I don't have to be explicit, right?
Mm.
So, it starts to understand you. And that's what'll happen with your phone. You'll get Dr. AI, and pretty soon it will know all those things about you.
Yeah.
It'll know what your weight fluctuates at. And it'll understand, eating a lot at Christmas and not eating a lot in January because you're not drinking in January, right? Like
Yeah.
it'll get all that about you.
Yeah.
And that means it'll be probably the best physician you've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, and I've read that the evidence suggests that the diagnostic capabilities of AI are already exceeding that of humans, isn't it? Because people think, oh well, I don't want to talk to the machine. I'd rather talk to a human. But they forget that humans make mistakes
Oh,
even more than the machine does.
yeah. And the problem is, I mentioned the problem with the data
Mm.
and how much there is, and that some of it's not good. Like when we got AI started looking at the data, it said, well, these pivotal papers are not valid
Mm.
because the statistics are wrong. And here they've been, benchmarks of
Yeah,
medical treatment
I mean,
forever. So this is, that you can't ignore that.
yeah,
You have
there's a
to,
lot about using male bodies to develop data, isn't it? And then applying it to women. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but I've read about that kind of stuff that's
that's
been
true.
going on for a
Yeah.
lot. So that
Yeah.
women's
And
healthcare is not as well researched, if you like, as male healthcare is, and that's had some very detrimental effects as well, hasn't it? So I
it
mean,
has.
presumably a lot of the data is
And,
biased in that way.
and it's biased in terms of ethnicity.
Yeah,
It's biased in terms of income because different income levels have different levels of care.
yeah,
So there's a lot of bias in the data. That's true. And one of the things that's great about AI is it can call out the bias so that you can understand
yeah,
that, I'm going to tell you this, it's the best information we have, but it really isn't about you because, you're a Black woman living in the Bronx. And maybe this isn't this, you never were even checked,
yeah,
right, for this. You weren't included in any of the data. And so that's different. But it also exposes something else, Paul, that's I think one of the most exciting parts about this. If you take all of the data, let's say that 340 million Americans are on have health 4.0. Let's just say that. Okay. It becomes the operating system
yeah,
for health. And they have Dr. AI. All of a sudden, we have a data lake of US health that we have never seen. And we give that intelligence, can then mine that to help discover things that we've never known.
yeah.
It can augment the development of medications. It can change the way we approach heart disease and diabetes. There's so much that
Yeah.
we could gain from that. And it doesn't have to be individually recognized. It can be pooled. Now imagine that the whole planet has this.
Mm.
All of a sudden, we begin to manage health globally in a way that we never have. We understand how to get rid of malaria, how to make those dollars that people are giving
Mm.
so well for, and what the real impact of war is on health. So, we begin to look at health granular, and that's going to be probably the way that humanity can actually survive.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great opportunity there. It's not without its problems, though, are there? I mean, I know lots of people that are very anxious. I mean, we've had a debate here in the UK about, big companies being able to access people's healthcare data, and you think,
Yeah,
well, on the one hand, there are tremendous benefits from pooling all the data,
right.
but there are also privacy concerns, and I mean, I'm sure this is the case in the US.
It is.
There
It
are
is.
tremendous anxieties about people's willingness to trust the government. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
the government
Well,
run the healthcare system effectively
right.
in the UK,
Right.
and they
They
don't.
do right now.
Yeah, they do right now, but they don't, but people are understandably very mistrusting of that
Mm,
because those things, people have been abused in the past. I mean, we've had the whole sort of scandal here with blood. There's a big blood scandal about uh, people, hemophiliacs, and we've had a big
mm,
scandal about that here. We've had a whole series of things, and people
mm.
you talk to people, and people are understandably saying, I'm not sure I want you guys to have access to all my data. So there are tremendous benefits from it all being pooled, but there is also a lot of anxiety. And again, some of that anxiety is not, is very deep seated. It's not what you might describe as rational. People
Correct.
are just plain old
Right.
anxious about it. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
how
And
do we overcome that to achieve
yeah,
those outcomes?
yeah. So, so you can talk to that all day long,
Mm,
but when people have a failure of trust, and let me just tell you, in the United States, we had a massive failure in trust in healthcare, and it was about COVID.
mm.
Um, and and so when you have that mistrust, you have to earn it back. You have to figure out how you provide the kinds of things that people need to feel
Mm.
like their best interests are the best
And how do
interests,
you do
are
that?
the
I
ones
mean,
being answered.
and how do you do that? Because that's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And I think transparency is one of them.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to be really frank and honest about what's been wrong and how to fix it. You know, it reminds me though that every time we have one of these major technology jumps, look at the craziness that went on around the Gutenberg press, for instance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That ability to publish
Yeah.
and spread information and knowledge because it threatened the people who held it. And I think that the thing that's contributing so much to mistrust right now is that we have actors in our political and economic lives that don't that aren't trustworthy.
Mm.
And that's eroding the whole system,
Yeah. Yeah. And
in my
doing
view.
immense damage, in my view.
Immense damage, immense damage. And you have to, I think in the end of the day, one of these days, someone's going to come along and they're going to say, not being frank isn't okay. And I give you this example that I think is really contributing a lot to trust issues right now. And that's this question about how many jobs AI is going to replace.
Mm.
I was at a meeting last week in Miami, and they had these various panels of very famous people, Chatham House rules. But basically, finally, at the end of this one panel, last 10 minutes, one of the CEOs said, I think we're doing a disservice to people by not telling them
Mm.
how many jobs are going to be replaced, frankly, and really,
Mm.
and what they can do about it. Because there's a lot of reskilling that can happen.
Mm.
And we have to make an opportunity available for them to understand that healthcare is going to be the same.
Mm.
I know it's very scary to some of my colleagues when I say to them, you know, the knowledge at the baseline of health, the knowledge is going to be available to everybody, basically for whatever it costs you to have ChatGPT or Gemini. That knowledge is available. What you need to ask yourself is, what are you adding? What is it that a human adds
Mm.
to the conversation as intimate about health that makes that valuable? And then how do we value it in the future? Now, if you're a surgeon and you're operating on blocked hearts or bad valves that can't be fixed any other way, there's some value in that for at least the near future.
Yeah.
But eventually we've got to rethink all this. It's an essential thing. And I think the fact that companies aren't being honest about this and not offering people a view of what in the next 5, 10, or 20 years is going to be valuable to their sector, to their company, to their line of sight, I think that's a huge breach of trust.
Mm. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. What I would say though is that some of this stuff is about predictions. I mean,
Mm.
and um, I mean, I'm an economist by training, and some people would say, um,
Can I just tell you,
it,
I've always wanted to be an economist, just so
well,
you know
but,
that.
but some people say, economic predictions are designed to make people that read tea leaves look like they know what they're doing. Economics is not a predictive science. You can't I mean, you can make generalizations. If you do these sorts of things, the economy will grow. If you do these sorts of things, it won't grow. You can't make that in very specific terms. And I think a lot of the predictions the problem with a lot of the predictions about what AI and technology are going to do or not do to the economy, to people's jobs, to people's lives, it's actually very difficult to make accurate predictions. So
Mm.
you can make general predictions. You can say if it involves using your hands and it involves skill, then those sorts of jobs are going to be around for a while. If it involves knowledge, you can say, well, AI is going to, you don't need people for the knowledge. You need people to do things, make breakfast or whatever, but you don't necessarily
Right.
need people to produce the recipes because the tech will do that for you. So you can make predictions about what's going to happen in a very general sense. Actually, it's very difficult to do it in a
Mm.
in a specific sense. And if I was a company, if I was the CEO of a big company thinking, what's going to happen to my people? I wouldn't want to make those predictions because there's a really good chance they'll be wrong. And it could be either
Mm.
way. It could be that AI will wipe out jobs, or it could be that AI creates loads of jobs. I mean, here, the history tells us that technology creates jobs.
Yes, yes.
These
And
things
that's
are not
and
easy
that's
to untangle.
no, they're not. But what I guess I'm trying to say is not that you have to say, well, 20% jobs will be lost, but you have to really know what you do and and figure out where that horizon is so that people can move to it.
Mm.
And in healthcare, you know, we've got to think about like the role of primary care. Everybody loves their primary care doctor.
Mm.
I love mine, loyal as heck. A lot of people do, but there's a lot of people that don't have one,
Mm.
and they're not going to be able to get one. And so, how do we help people and yet help the people that are going into medicine to understand where that's going to be? You're right; it's not a sure thing, but I think our ability to predict the future may be better than it was.
Mm. Well, I hope you're right about that. I mean, just on that point, one of the other interesting areas, again, that is certainly happening at the moment here in the UK, is around mental health. I mean, we've had a big debate about
Mm.
physical health in the UK, and now people are starting to say, well, we need to recognise mental health as being the equivalent of physical health.
Yeah,
And our NHS, whilst people love the NHS, it's our religion, people say,
totally,
doesn't
totally.
doesn't doesn't it hasn't been that great at helping people with mental health problems. So there's another shift taking place, and I was talking to some therapists the other week who are really quite worried that AI will take away a therapist's job, and we're seeing people that are, because they can't access therapies, things like CBT, they can't access that cheaply. They're using AI, which you can get for free. They're using that technology as a vehicle to, you know, engage with some of those things. Now, at the
Yeah,
moment, there's we don't know how well that's working, whether people are, there's a lot of sort of anxiety about that.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So my point is, there's so many shifts taking place. The technology will change so many things. It's also, I mean, whilst it's difficult to predict any one sector, it's also difficult to predict the way these things are going to interact.
Mm.
Because to come back to your point about the moving to a wellness agenda, I mean, that is dictated to a greater extent by how you see it
Yes,
and
yes,
your own mental well-being and whether
right.
you are resilient and so on.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated game, isn't it?
It's so complicated. And actually, mental health is one of the things that I write about in my book. And
Right.
I really believe that it's key. And especially I've found in talking to young people that it's probably one of their major problems. Because when you think about it in the United States, in the middle class family, you're not going to probably get malaria, right? But you are encountering issues that have to do with mental wellness
Yeah.
almost daily, and a lot of that is the anxiety of the workplace and the interpersonal relationships you have, whether or not you want to be married and have kids, which is kind of a big issue right now in the United States. And so, my nieces and nephews that are young, grandnieces and nephews that are even younger, they're all dealing with these things. And so having an intelligence that you can tap into anytime, like you can even say, let's say that you're right now, it's the time of year for bonuses and job reviews. Let's say that you sit down with your manager and your job review isn't what you thought it was going to be. And you really need to get some advice about how to react to this in real time.
Mm.
That you're not going to be able to access a person for that. But
Mm.
if you have, if the intelligence that you're working with on your phone knows all about you, and you say, listen, I'm just uploaded my performance evaluation and my bonus, and I'm super disappointed and I don't know how to react to this. Like what's the best option for me
Mm.
to enhance how I respond
Yeah.
right now in real time? It'll tell you, you know,
And
don't
I think,
don't run around the office
yeah,
bitching and moaning like to
yeah,
you and I that
yeah,
might seem intuitive, but trust me, to a 24-year-old, not so much.
yeah,
Like that's this is the reason, like all the times in the past, Paul, when technology did something different, there's always something value that's driving it.
yeah.
It's the value that drives AI
Let me
in
just
that
pick
space.
that point up because I mean it's a great example that you've just given, and I think lots of people would do that. They would go to AI,
Yeah,
one of the AI engineers, and say, "How do I negotiate with my boss given what they've said?" Or yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
but again, what you've identified there is a very good example, but it's also an example of reactiveness.
Mm,
The thing that interests me about mental health is not the healthcare for people that are struggling. I mean, it does interest me in the sense I'd like to see it more widely available to people that need it.
sure.
But the
Yeah.
real thing that interests me is how do you use that technology to build people's resilience so that they don't need that? What
Yeah.
we don't seem to have, and it may be different in the US, but what I haven't seen a lot of here in the UK is technology being used. I mean, maybe this is a business opportunity actually, but I don't see technology being used to help people develop resilience. I don't see that
Mm,
being used in
mm, mm,
schools. I
mm,
don't see
mm,
it being used with. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the moment about people entering the labour market and really struggling because they feel a
mhm.
bit disconnected. They don't particularly want to work from home, but they might need to because the jobs are remote and they want to. There's a whole raft of issues around
Right.
that are
Right.
causing.
Right.
We're not. AI is by its nature reactive. So
I don't think it has
how
to
do we
be.
challenge that? How do we tackle that?
Yeah, I don't think AI is by its nature either way. I think AI is the product of what we use it for. And
So
so
how do
it
you
in
encourage
terms of
people to be
resilience,
proactive then
yeah, so
about the
in health,
resilience?
it's so easy, both mentally, physically, but you're going to laugh when you hear this, financially. I was talking to someone the other day and I said to someone, I said, my mom and dad both were from immigrant families. They didn't know anything about planning financial health.
Mm.
So I didn't know anything about
Yeah,
planning financial health.
yeah,
And a lot of people don't know anything about planning their financial health. So it turns out that financial health is closely related to mental health and physical health. They're
yeah,
not separate things. And so when you teach people resilience, Paul, you have to teach it in all three domains. And
yeah,
that's why all three domains are part of the system that I'm proposing that we adopt,
yeah,
that it's not just one of those.
yeah. And I think that's
Resilience exists and is important across that spectrum, I think.
yeah, and it's a very important point you're making about it being related to all three areas. I mean, I totally get that. One last thing, I mean, we're going to have to wind up in a second, but one of the things that is interesting about it is I've worked in education many, 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 many
Mm,
years ago. One of the things that interested me was I worked for somebody who just spent a chunk of time as an educator in the US and came back. And one of the things he said to me was the big difference between kids coming out of school in the US compared to kids coming out of school in the UK was that US children were very confident. And that's a good thing. That's,
Mm,
and
mhm.
he did a lot of work actually
Right.
to build up the confidence. I mean, his big thing was helping build the confidence of people leaving schools in the UK. He made a lot of progress on that. I mean, I won't
That's
name him, but
cool.
he was a national figure. One of the things that's interesting about AI, though, is that you don't just need to be able to say, I'm great at this and I can do that and I've done this. The kind of the ability to speak confidently is a great thing, but AI demands a different thing. I think it demands a greater curiosity, the ability to ask insightful questions, the ability to want to kind of get inside an issue. And one of the things that I see with people is that they're great at saying how great they are. And that's not, I mean, I'm not knocking the confidence thing, that's a good thing. Often they're less good at asking good questions.
Mm,
And to
mm,
be proactive with AI, whether it's
yeah.
about your health, physical health, or your mental health, or your financial health, requires a curiosity that I don't think the education system is. I mean, I may be wrong about this, but I don't see it. I don't see that emerging. I don't see the
Mm,
big thing about kids coming out of school
mm,
is that they're a load more confident a load more curious than they used to be.
yeah.
Curiosity seems to be something that some people are, but a lot of people don't seem very confident. Sorry, don't seem very curious. And I think that's an interesting
Yeah.
because without
It's
curiosity, you're not
super.
going to ask the questions.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because having worked with AI kind of close, I started working with OpenAI in May of 24.
Right.
Okay. So that's about the length of my experience. But I find that prompt engineering piece, all of us could become really good prompt engineers.
Yeah.
And it is the exploration of the question that's, to me, one of the most fascinating things of working with AI.
Yeah.
And I found that I've gotten a lot better at it. Like I'm a lot better at asking questions
Yeah.
than I was 18 months ago, even though, you can imagine as someone who trains in healthcare, every single moment of your life is about asking questions of
Yeah. Well,
people,
doctors,
you
my,
know,
my
you know,
experience with doctors is that they're pretty good at it because they're trained to diagnose. You
they
diagnose on
are,
they're asking for
they
questions.
are,
So,
they
but I
are.
don't see that in a lot of other professions. I mean, some other professions. I'm not saying nobody has it, but often people are very good at saying, "I think this," rather than what we need to know is more about X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm hoping, actually, as you say that, I think to myself, I'm hoping that younger groups of people that trained in a different time
yeah,
when things were not as concrete, they're not as concrete now as they were, right? In the old days, things were about building structures
yeah,
in real time and space, but now they're about building structures that are more, mind structures. I always think of, NVIDIA and Jensen and that idea that he has around that, right? So I think that as we get into that, more structures that we see rather than structures that we build, we're going to find that kind of talent for asking a lot of questions is crucial.
yeah. It's
I
about how
think
we
that,
think, isn't it?
yeah, it's really about how we think and the openness that we have. To be honest with you, I think having more openness to learn, society to
It's a good thing.
society and person to person, can only benefit humanity.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, I think what you're saying is that that's a good thing, and I think I'll probably agree with you. Let me ask you one final question before we start to wind up. I mean, when you look back on, I mean, obviously you've been a surgeon, you've been in the medical profession for a long time. More recently, you've spent a few years writing this book. When you look back on the process of writing the book, specific, because we haven't got all day to talk about what you've learned as a surgeon. What have you learned from writing the book? Do you feel differently about healthcare as a result of doing this? I mean, has it clarified your thinking in new ways? I mean, what have you learned from doing the book?
I think that I've learned about hope.
Right.
I really believe that humanity is worth saving. I've spent a lot of my time in my life trying to do that.
Mm.
But when you do it one on one, it's of immense value, the most valuable thing I've ever done. But when you think about it as a population as a planet of people,
Mhm.
and what can be if we give ourselves the gift of health, if we provide health as the baseline, we can do pretty much anything
Mm.
that can be done. And that's, to me, that hope of really being able to get to taking illness off the table
Mm.
in the main, man, that would really be a bonus that we could give every single person.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth going for. I
It's
think the
exciting
timing is
stuff.
right.
It's exciting stuff, isn't it?
It is. It's so exciting. I mean, to take on the entire healthcare infrastructure, you got to be excited. you
Yeah,
know,
and you've got. I
you
mean, I
know.
love a bit of ambition, Robin. So I mean, I've got to say, I'm impressed.
Oh
I'm
well,
impressed by that.
I
So
just really love. I love take care of people, and this is just another extension of it,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah. Robin, thank you for sharing that journey. I mean, good luck with the book. I mean,
Thank you.
sounds really, really interesting, and certainly we've had some really interesting conversations. And I really appreciate you
It's
making
fun.
the time to come and talk us through your ideas. Very powerful and very ambitious, and those are good things. So, like I
Thank
say,
you.
good luck going forward.
I appreciate being here with you, Paul. It's
All right.
really been great.
Cheers. See you soon, Robin. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Bye bye.